Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Shackle 5858. I am Amish Shackle. Following news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please, let's go to the headlines.
Tonight, breaking news, the deadly flooding tragedy in central Texas. The urgent search and rescue operations underway right now. At least 20 girls from a summer camp are missing. More than a dozen people killed. Catastrophic flooding, overwhelming summer camps for children in Clark County, north of San Antonio. Waterfront properties along the Guadalupe River washed away. The mayor saying this happened overnight when many were asleep. And a state of emergency in New Jersey. At least 3 people killed during severe thunderstorms. Residents of Plainfield warned to stay indoors. And a tropical depression forming offshore about 150 miles southeast of Charleston, South Carolina, with sustained winds of 35 miles per hour. Our weather team tracking it all. President Trump's victory lap, signing that massive tax cut and spending bill into law at the White House. The centerpiece of his domestic agenda, a military plane flyover with a B-2 bomb. The celebrations. It's off days of negotiations and arm twisting. The bill increases debt by more than $3 trillion. And their deadly fireworks explosion in Southern California, multiple homes destroyed. It's just the latest in a string of similar incidents this week. Terrifying moments on the taxiway at Orlando Airport.
Unfortunately, we have no brake systems or anything like that.
A JetBlue flight preparing to take off, veering into the grass. What we're learning tonight. Russia hitting Ukraine with a massive aerial assault, the largest of the war, launching more than 500 drones just hours before President Trump spoke with Ukraine's President Zelensky. Shark sightings closing a popular New York beach. The new video and warning from authorities tonight. The hot dog king is back. Joey Chestnut devouring the competition at the world-famous eating contest. And America Strong tonight. The sights and sounds that
America's military. So let's take a look at the area. Let's bring in U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker. Happy 4th of July, Matt. Thanks for being with us today. We appreciate you joining us here. The president says he wants to rebuild America's military. So let's take a look at the areas that this $150 billion in the big beautiful bill, where it's going. It's going to increase the fleet of Navy warships. It will go toward building his Golden Dome defense project and also refilling America's precision weapons arsenal, which has been depleted after helping out Ukraine. So in your view, is this a wise allocation of these resources from this bill?
Yes, it is, and happy Independence Day to you as well. What we're seeing both in the war in Ukraine and the 12-day war between Israel and Iran is that air defense and missile defense is crucial. In fact, it's decisive. That's the reason Iran lost the 12-day war. And it's why Ukraine for 3 years now has been fighting with the Russians, is because of air defense. And so the Golden Dome is the most important strategic asset that can be developed for the United States in the protection of the homeland. And at the same time, we are in a strategic competition with China, and China is continuing in peacetime to build a big military, and we need to respond to that, and we also need to address all of the global threats. So shipbuilding is going to be crucial, and then missiles are really, as we see happening everywhere, is going to be the weapon of choice in a lot of conflict. But I think the allies that we have in NATO and across the globe saw very clearly when the B-2s dropped the bunker buster bombs on Iran and ended their nuclear program, what U.S. capabilities mean. And so this big, beautiful bill obviously is leaning into that and making sure the U.S. is always at the forefront of defending the homeland and projecting power.
So former President Joe Biden has been making some headlines of late back in the public eye. He spoke at a convention in San Diego claiming that he is getting calls from a number of European leaders asking him to get engaged. He says, I'm not because things are different. But, what do you make of this? And do you think that this will undermine what President Trump is trying to do with European leaders?
I've spent the last 3 months in Europe working at NATO and working with our allies and working with European leaders. And I would have to tell you, in the room last week at the NATO summit, all eyes were on Donald Trump. He commanded the room. He led that.
On This Friday night, a flawed forecast.
I absolutely believe that the program is panic.
A global news investigation reveals a grossly underestimated wait list for help from Canada's vaccine injury support program. Aerial assault. A record number of drones and missiles pummel Kyiv as Russia rejects a bid for truce in Ukraine. Devastating and deadly flooding in Texas.
The House manager said, hey, y'all need to get out now.
The warning for residents as rising waters ravage riverfront communities. Plus, breaking barriers.
I hope people remember me as not only a great player, but also a great leader.
The Blue Jays' top prospect playing for a purpose bigger than baseball.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Tracy Tom.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin with our exclusive investigation into the federal government's vaccine injury support program. Government documents obtained by Global News reveal it severely underestimated the number of claims it would receive. The program was created during the pandemic to help provide financial relief in those rare cases where people were seriously injured by the vaccine. At the time, it was expected that dozens, possibly, the program created during the pandemic to help provide financial relief in those rare cases where people were seriously and permanently injured by a vaccine. At the time, it was expected that dozens, possibly hundreds, would apply each year. But as Carolyn Jarvis reports, 4 years later, that number has skyrocketed.
I looked this morning, it still says I'm in the application phase.
Kayla Pollock has been waiting 3 years for her case to be assessed by the Vaccine Injury Support Program.
I haven't gotten even a message back saying we're looking at your file.
She is one of more than 1,700 injured people who are still in the queue.
I don't think they've even read my claim.
Kayla has a condition called transverse myelitis, a spinal cord disorder which has been documented after COVID vaccination.
I can't move my hand.
It was only days after her third shot the symptoms started. The searing pain followed a few weeks later.
From about here down, nothing moves and nothing works.
The Vaccine Injury Support Program, or VISP, is run by a private company called Oxaro. It bid on the lucrative government contract, promising speedy response times. But emails to the injured say, due to an unexpectedly high volume of claims, VISP will respond quarterly. The forecast for that volume of claims was flawed from the start. The Public Health Agency of Canada, which oversees the program, estimated an average of 40 claims a year, with the potential for more in the first few years. That estimate was bumped up to 400 valid claims a year in the contract with Oxaro, but it was still off. Today, more than 3,000 people have applied in
Good evening, I'm Sun Yang. Jeff Bennett and Anna Namaz are away. On the NewsHour tonight, the Supreme Court completes another historic term with rulings that expand presidential authority and could have far-reaching consequences for the future of American democracy. As extreme heat becomes a dangerous new normal, doctors warn that high temperatures are posing more risks to the human body.
Effects of extreme heat might not show up right away as a diagnosable health condition, but they could be taking a silent toll at the cellular and the molecular level.
And on this 4th of July, we visit the National Museum of the Marine Corps, commemorating the Corps' 250-year history.
Daily News live from Berlin. Donald Trump signs his so-called Big Beautiful Bill into law. There's a party atmosphere for the ceremony at a White House picnic on the 4th of July, but opponents warn millions of Americans could be left without health care. Also coming up, Hamas says it is ready to begin talks immediately on a ceasefire in Gaza proposed by the United States. Officials say more than 100 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks in the last day. And Ukraine reinforces its defense lines in the country's northeast ahead of an expected advance by Russian forces. I'm Monica Jones. Welcome to the program. Donald Trump has signed his Big Beautiful Bill into law a day after it was passed by the U.S. Congress with overwhelming Republican support. The president formally approved the legislation at the White House during the 4th of July celebrations. Measures include cutting taxes and boosting spending on defense and immigration control. Opponents have criticized sweeping cuts to federal safety net programs, warning that millions of Americans could lose health coverage. A grand display are on France 24. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
Hello and welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on Daybreak. Our headlines this hour. Hamas says it is ready to enter talks over a U.S.-backed proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza. Donald Trump says there could be a deal as early as next week when Benjamin Netanyahu visits the White House. Nearly 24 young girls are missing after flash flooding in south-central Texas. Months of rain fell in just several hours, overflowing a river and leaving at least 24 people dead. Rescue workers racing to save those who remain trapped or missing. And cycling fans gather in northern France, where the 112th edition of the Tour de France is due to set off from Lille. France 24 has been getting a behind-the-scenes look from Team Cofidis as they gear up for the start of the race.
This is Asia Now. It's 2 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 11:30 in New Delhi, and 1 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Paul Sun. At this hour, U.S. President Donald Trump signs off on tariffs that are set to take effect. 12 countries to get formal notice on Monday, outlining the new levy rates they'll soon face. China's top diplomat Wang Yi wraps up his European tour in Paris. His visit follows Beijing's move to ease off tariffs on French cognac, but France says deeper trade tensions remain on the table. A breakthrough may be in sight as Hamas says it's ready to talk after receiving a US-backed ceasefire proposal. President Trump is optimistic a deal could be sealed within days, but on the ground, the violence rages on.
Cause of death? She drowned. Bringing us all talk. Patience. Friday 8:30 on ABC TV and ABC iView. Today, Victoria Police investigate a potential third incident in Melbourne after an arson attack at a city synagogue.
These crimes are disgusting and abhorrent, but at this stage we are not declaring this a terrorist incident.
A man charged over the alleged assault of 3 police officers in Sydney's West. Also ahead, Australian actor Julian McMahon has died of cancer at the age of 56. And Hamas gives a positive response to a US-backed proposal for a ceasefire to end the 21-month Gaza war. Hello, welcome to ABC News. I'm Laura Dunkley. Victoria Police say they are now investigating 3 incidents in Melbourne overnight, including an arson attack on a city synagogue. They've released more details about a man who entered the synagogue grounds on Albert Street at about 8 last night. He poured a flammable liquid on the front door of the building, then set it on fire before fleeing. Reporter Natasha McFarlane has more from Melbourne. The police... Hello, very good morning. It's 7 o'clock. Coming up on the show today, a frantic search for survivors in the US state of Texas after flash flooding kills at least 24 people. And Emma Raducanu is out of Wimbledon, but Cameron Norrie and Sunday Cartel go through to the last 60. It's Saturday, the 5th of July. Deadly flooding hits Texas with more than 20 children from a summer camp amongst the missing. The funeral of footballer Diogo Jota and his brother will be held today as his Liverpool teammates arrive in Portugal. Pulse 9 Action is officially banned as a terrorist group after losing a late legal challenge. Oasis fans are still mad for it after all these years. The brothers kick off their reunion tour in Cardiff.
As we were walking out, I think I literally heard someone behind me saying I'd have paid £10,000 to see them. So I think that says it all.
And in cricket, JB Smith hits the second fastest ever century by an England player, but India are firmly in control of the second test.
Hello, very good morning. Thanks for joining us here on The Breakfast Show.
Africa News. The news. The meetings between the two leaders focused on clean energy, tourism, jobs and cultural exchange. Ramaphosa's guest, President Alexander Van der Bellen, said Austria and South Africa are two countries committed to building a brighter future.
South Africa is Austria's largest trading partner on the African continent and accounts for almost a third of Austria's total exports to the African continent. More than a quarter of all African imports to Austria are from South Africa.
The Austrian president said South Africa has set itself as a model for many nations transitioning into democracy from a dark and turbulent past. Touted as a high-tech utopia powered by renewable energy and bankrolled by its own cryptocurrency, Akon City was ambitious as it was daring. Designed with curvy skyscrapers and sleek modern infrastructure, early renderings of Akon City drew comparisons to Marvel's fictional African metropolis, Wakanda. It was supposed to come at a cost of $6 billion. Nearly 7 years on, much of the 800-acre piece of land allocated for the project remains an empty grassland, save for a single unfinished reception building. Now Senegal is repossessing the land to build something realistic, the BBC reported, citing the country's tourism authorities. Senegal's leaders had hoped that the project would help transform the country where Akon, born Alioune Badara Thiam, spent a part of his childhood. The singer has struggled to get funding for the project, while legal challenges have also taken their toll. The Nigerian Football Federation announced Rufai's death on Thursday. Rufai was widely regarded as one of the best African goalkeepers ever and had a 20-year playing career that included stints at clubs in Portugal, Spain, Belgium and the Netherlands. He helped the Super Eagles win the Africa Cup of Nations in 1994 and also represented his nation at the FIFA World Cup in 1994 and 1998. With Rufai in goal, Nigeria reached the last 16 of the 1994 World Cup in the United States. He becomes the 6th member of that side to pass away. The others are Stephen Keshi, Rashid Yekini, Wilfred Abovanale, Thompson Oliha and Uche Okafor. They belong to what many Nigerians termed as the golden generation of the 1990s.
Music legend Angelique Kidjo makes history becoming the first African artist to earn a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It's yet another milestone in a career packed with accolades. The Beninese singer already boasts 5 Grammy Awards and a career spanning 4 decades. With 16 albums to her name, Kidjo blends Afrobeats with jazz, R&B, funk, and much more. Kidjo's powerful voice has earned her fans across continents, but her journey to the top wasn't easy. Born and raised in Benin, Kidjo fled to Paris in 1983, escaping political repression under the country's former communist regime. The icon continues to give back as a UNICEF ambassador and in her work advocating for Africa.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shackle 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Have a good life. Bye-bye.